And it's Ken Kraetzer for CBSI and the Marketing Club of New York. We're down at Chelsea Piers at a very interesting event hosted by IBM and have a chance to talk to one of the speakers. That is Chris Zobler, 22 years at IBM. Chris, great event. What was it like to talk to the audience today?
Generative AI is probably one of the most interesting conversations that we're having because it touches every facet of our personal and professional lives. So great conversation as always, and very informative conversation, hearing feedback from our clients.
And you talked a little bit about bringing AI to the enterprise in different use cases, and made an interesting point that 77% of businesses already are using generative AI, whether management knows it or not. Why is that so? Why is AI starting to take hold?
I think it's about efficiency. At the end of the day, if we can find better, more efficient ways to complete the tasks that we're being asked to deliver, then the promise really is endless. And ultimately, it comes back to compliance and regulation. How much oversight is too much? How much regulation is enough? And how can we operate somewhere in between?
Well, at CBSI, we work with 1,200 banks around the country, and that was kind of one of the use cases. Fraud prevention, customer service. What are some of the applications of Watson AI to the banking industry?
I think what you will start to see from a generative AI perspective is really growth in three areas. One is around application modernization. So there's a lot of discussion around code generation, around code translation, and in particular clients that are leveraging legacy applications that they're looking to modernize. The other is around customer care. So that continues to be an area that we've seen significant growth over the last 7 or 8 years. But now with the incremental capabilities of generative AI, how do you hyper-personalize an experience so that it feels like you're talking to me as an individual and not as somebody that's part of a segment? And I think the third area that we will see a lot of growth is in the digital workforce space. So it's not just about simple task automation, but actually how can we employ digital workers to be a part of our workforce and help drive efficiency and productivity for the enterprise.
And in the Marketing Club of New York, we have quite a few digital agencies developing creative and campaigns for their clients. How do you see AI helping an advertising agency develop a new idea?
That's a really interesting question because a lot of what we see now, especially the last couple of weeks, has really been around copyright information. So in the generative AI space, which information should the tools actually have access to? And what I'm actually experiencing is I do believe that we will see a push for more human-generated content. One of the other stats that I saw a couple of weeks ago is that in the next couple of years, upwards of 70 to 80% of all internet content will actually be generated by AI. So I think what you will see is while AI can generate a lot of content, that creativity that's part of human nature, we will see a drive to get some of that back into the products and the services that are expected from a consumer perspective.
Talk a little bit about customer care. Certainly during the pandemic, organizations were trying to find ways to use artificial intelligence to answer questions for customers when they didn't have staff. How do you see AI and the Watson product helping with customer service and being a big part of serving customers?
So in that space, it's been one of the largest growing spaces for us at IBM from a cloud perspective. So Watson and our core portfolio of discovery and conversational AI not only was effective during the COVID pandemic through automation, but we were able to address 95+% of the inbound questions that many of our clients had asked. But the really exciting thing was we were able to do so at a scale that most of our competition couldn't handle. We're talking tens of millions of client-side conversations per week with 95+% accuracy at clients like Bradesco, at organizations like CVS, where in 3 weeks we actually built a conversational AI solution that would help answer questions around testing, around availability, around interaction of vaccines. And we were able to roll that out for close to 70 million clients in a very short period of time.
Got to ask you, talked a little bit about how NASA is using AI and working IBM geospatial data. How does that work?
So at the end of the day, one of the things that certainly here in New York, we can't argue that the temperatures now are warmer than they've been in recent memory. So The global crisis that we are trying to evaluate is how do we get better data to better understand what the impact of climate will be. So NASA's actually partnered with IBM from a geospatial perspective to get better understanding of what some of the climate changes are in real time. So that way we can come up with a better solution for humanity. And the data sets, quite honestly, you can imagine the size of the data and the volume of the data that we're actually aggregating. So that's one of the really exciting use cases that we've partnered with NASA on.
Very good. And just tell us why Watson X, it was reintroduced, launched in July. What are its key competitive advantages? Why is it different from other AI products on the market?
I would boil it down to four things that we are focused on from an AI for the enterprise space. One is we are open. So we don't believe that one model will rule the day, but it will be a combination of smaller language models that are fit for purpose, domain specifically trained. And we are going to embrace the open source community because we know that that's where innovation happens. We are going to be targeted, so the domain specific element becomes important. Because the size of the internet data that's available, we want to get better, more effectively trained models so that our clients can actually get the benefit of having to prompt and tune less for better results. We also want to make sure that we're trusted. So where the data comes from matters. And so from a trust perspective, not only do we provide the elements for governance and model transparency and drift and bias detection, but also being able to provide the data provenance of where and how we've trained the models becomes really important. And lastly, it's about empowering our clients to be able to deploy those models anywhere, on any cloud, public, private, or otherwise. So collectively, those are the four things that I truly believe are differentiators for IBM.
And Chris, just a final thought. You mentioned your presentation where this may be in 2030. I mean, really just 7 years from now, but it's all the technology is changing so fast. What direction is AI going? Where do you think we'll be shortly down the road?
I think we're going to see a shift in the types of jobs that are, quite honestly, needed to run the enterprise. So a job like a prompt engineer was something that most of the population didn't know would exist more than 6 months ago. But with the introduction of tools like GPT, making the public more aware of the possibilities of what generative AI can bring, we will see a shift in the types of jobs and the functions of the individuals that are required to run the enterprise, because we'll be able to do so in a much more efficient and operationally sound way. So it's an exciting time to be alive, and certainly to be in the industry.
Absolutely. Chris, just one final question for you. Tell us a little bit about your career. How did you join IBM? What have been some of the steps along your path?
So I applied online actually as a summer intern in between my sophomore and junior year. I attended Babson College up in Wellesley, Massachusetts. I got an interview and was asked to come in, which for at the time I thought was going to be a summer job. Ultimately, that job turned into working full-time in our global business services organization. And I've been in the software group now 21 years, having been a seller for our Lotus brand, our automation brand, our data and analytics brand. I've run a number of different roles and businesses globally, and now I have the privilege of being responsible for data and AI across the Americas. So great opportunity, great company. I've had the opportunity to transform myself as a part of my career, taking on different roles and certainly covering different geographies.
Chris Zobler from 22 years at IBM. Thank you for inviting us down to this very interesting session down here at Chelsea Piers. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you too, Ken. Thank you.
Good to see you. This is Ken Kraetzer for CBSI and the Marketing Club of New York at Chelsea Piers in New York City.